For technology, I spoke about the game Rainbow Six Siege. This is because the PC, PS4 and Xbox have all the controls necessary to play this game in its full potential.
If you would like to go outside of the Sony spectrum, you can buy other controllers other than the PS4, like Elite and Scuff PS4 controllers, which can do things like enhance your reactions.
You can also enhance the video game by buying things such as the Year 1, 2 and 3 operators, which will all add a different style to the game.
But by buying these with real money, it can be quite costly, or you could save in the game, but it can be very time consuming.
By saving in the game, that means you'll have to save up your renown, which is an in-game currency. You have to get renown by winning games or losing them. If you win games, you get more. If you lose games, you get a lot less.
To enhance your gameplay more, you can purchase high-quality headsets, which can enable you to listen for footsteps, which can give you a rough idea of where the opposition stands. And also a pro of headsets is you can communicate with your team, giving more ideas.
However, the con of buying a high quality headset is how costly it may be. Also, there are operators within the game, such as Kavera, who can counterattack this, since her ability is having a silent step and also suppressed weapons. For the human factors in Rainbow Six Siege, these will mainly come down to if someone has a disability that would affect their hands or their hand movements. This would be because if they have trouble moving their hands, then it will be hard for them to navigate their way around the controller or to use it at all.
Some issues surrounding this may be arthritis, because arthritis can restrict your movement in your hands or arms, which can make you struggle to do gameplay. Another limiting factor could be photosensitive epilepsy, because games can have flashing images and that can trigger their seizures, and with some epilepsies it can cause blindness or restricted movement.
Also, the player's hearing may also affect their gameplay, because the game is primarily based on being able to hear the enemy and having an advantage over their position. But if the player cannot hear this, then it can affect them, since they will not have this advantage that the other players also have. For the user interface in Rainbow Six Siege, there's a variety of things, but one of the main things people notice that is different from other first-person shooters is the HUD. The HUD will have the ammo and the weapon type. There will also be an option for how many drones the person may have left, or if they do have any left. There will also be a compass and the room name and floor underneath the compass. This helps the players so they can make call-outs to their teammates, enabling them to know where the enemy is again. Also, there will be an operator's ability. So, for example, if the person is playing as Ash, they will have an indication of how many slither charges they have left. At the top of the screen, there will be the time and the chosen operators by both teams.
As well as the HUD, there are many user interface aspects in the main menu. For example, the Alpha Pack section, where you can buy Alpha Packs with your in-game currency known as Renown, which is a currency you can earn through long times of playing, which you can use to buy the Alpha Packs, or you can also spend money on the Alpha Packs, which can be classed as gambling, and it's still legal for people under the legal limit, which is a big con about this game because it can raise a lot of controversy. In the menu there is also an in-game store, which you can use real money to purchase another currency called R6 credits, which can be used to buy many things such as renown boosters, camos, weapon attachments and operators. When you buy a renown booster, it can double the amount of renown you earn from a game, which can help go towards many things such as alpha packs and camos and operators, which is a vicious cycle of buying and spending. In the menu there is also a few options for different game modes, such as Terrorist Hunt, which is a game mode where against the AIs programmed into the game, which is good for people who have just started the game, which for training and also for professionals to warm up. Then there is a casual gameplay, which is also good for beginners and for more experienced players to warm up and just to mess around, not playing with such serious consequences if you do something wrong. Then there is also the ranked game mode where people play a lot more competitively, and if you can get a lot of abuse if you do something wrong. And this is also where you get ranked, and people do tend to judge you depending on what rank you are, such as a low rank like the lowest rank, which is Copper 4. If people see that you are Copper 4, you can receive some abuse, people saying you're not good and many things like that. But if you're on one of the highest ranks, which is Diamond, you can really receive a lot of praise. But if you do something wrong in the Diamond rank, people can start abusing you for that.
In the options menu, there are control features such as sensitivity. This can affect your playstyle because if you have a low sensitivity, it may be hard for you to flick on players who may be trying to flank you from behind. There is also an option to adjust your brightness. This can be effective because if your brightness is too low, it may be hard to see the players coming towards you. Then if it's too high, it can also make it difficult since the screen will be too bright. There are also a variety of controls such as default, southpaw, lefty and southpaw lefty. These will all have different options for different players who may like the controller in a certain way. For the visual feedback in Rainbow Six Siege, it's mainly based on the colours, so operators from the same team or squad are colour coordinated. For example, the SAS team, which will consist of Ash, Thermite, Castle and Pulse, are all red, black and white. This shows that they are all together and from the SAS. Also, in some maps it will have darkness, or dark corners or areas, which can imply stealth, which will help the operator to creep around a bit so they can get the advantage on their enemy. In some maps, like the theme park, lights will flash or stutter, which can make it distracting for the attacker to push the defender since they'll be focused on the lights instead of them. The viewpoint for the game is always first person, but you can go onto cameras or drones. When on the camera, you can put a ping on the enemy which will show up as a red marker. This will indicate to your team where an enemy is or may be attacking from. However, you can set pings yourself which will come up as a yellow ping for your teammates, which will imply that you want them to either reinforce or destroy something within the area.
There is not much dialogue in this game, but when there is, it is usually random generated call-outs made by operators when using their unique ability. For example, when Frost uses her special ability, which is placing down welcome mats, she normally says placing the welcome mats. Another time when audio dialogue plays is a time reminder for many things, such as when the last 15 seconds of the game is remaining, a person unknown will call out that there's 15 seconds remaining and a more intense music will start playing. This music will put more tension and pressure onto the attackers, making them feel the need to start attacking, which can cause much chance of a error to happen and the defenders winning. Some Foley effects in the game could potentially be gunshots and footsteps because they do sound the same every single shot made, so this leads me to believe that it is not really a gunshot or a footstep. Music in this game isn't often, but normally on a map where there is a radio, music will be playing. For example, the map Clubhouse, where there is a jukebox in the bar which plays relatively calming bar music, which can be stopped by shooting the jukebox. This music is normally made as a distraction to help the defenders work to stop the attackers. The emotion in this game made in the last few minutes of the round can be very intense and adrenaline rushing because it makes them feel like they need to work harder towards it, which puts a large chance of a mistake to be made.
The physical effects in this game are mainly made by shooting the weapons, which can make your DualShock 4 controller or Xbox One controller vibrate. When it vibrates, it adds a sense of realism, since a real gun would not just stay still when it's being shot. The controller also vibrates when the person takes any form of damage. Also, on the PS4 controllers, the light on the front of the controller will flash red when you are harmed, or it will stay green when the player has not taken any damage at all. This is different when playing on the PC, as you do not get the lighting effects or the vibrations through the keyboard or mouse. So for the user psychology in Rainbow Six Siege, it mainly comes from remembering parts of the maps and where enemies will push from. This will help because, like, if you know where someone's going to push from, then you can counter-attack it quite easily by sitting in an area where you can see onto that door, window or entrance. For the long-term memory in the game, it'll probably be where you remember which operators have what abilities and which parts of the maps are where. But for the short term, it'll be what the enemy team have chose for their operators. This is only short term because you only remember it for a round or so.
For the metaphorical information, this could be the dark parts of the map to imply stealth, which is what the game is primarily based on. Another thing for metaphorical information could be footsteps, gunshots, operator calls outs, because they give away the enemy position, which can give the opposite team a good advantage into how to attack. These are all included in audio metaphors.
Rainbow Six Siege is mainly based on decision making. This is because, due to what map it is or where the opposition may go for the room, you have to choose what operators you'd need to play, which could be necessary for that objective. For the rapid input side of it, this may be where the player has to use their reflexes to get the advantage. The reflexes will give you an advantage since you may be able to react quicker to the situation given. Since the attacker will be coming towards you and you'll have to sit there, they will have the advantage immediately, but if you can turn on them quicker, then you will gain that advantage. Within the game there is no sort of thing such as button mashing, which can be seen in Guitar Hero. This is not seen in Rainbow, because if anything like that was supposed to happen, it would just mess up the entire game for you and your team, since you would probably be shooting your weapon, spinning around and not knowing what to do. This would mean that the enemy team can hear you shooting and they'd be able to immediately go into your position. The control method design in Rainbow Six Siege, the prototyping side of it can be seen within the test servers. The test servers are effective because that is how Ubisoft want the new update to be, but there are still a few final updates that they need to do before it gets released. By using the test servers, they get to have the player's opinion on it before it gets released, just so that they know if they like it or not. For prototyping as well, there will be no other updates in Rainbow other than adding operators, adding maps, or adding new camos and charms. They will never start to remap the entire HUD or start to remap the controls. This is because their community have got so used to how it is, and if they start to change it, they might start to lose a few fans. Also, by changing the controls, people would lose the routine of how they are at it, and also they would have to basically relearn it like it's a completely fresh game to them. This would cause them to dislike it, since they are already used to how it is and like it.
For technology in Mario Kart, Nintendo Switch is perfect because it has all the controls necessary to play the full game with perfect functionality. In the game you can play two-player, which you can separate both Joy-Cons from the main console, but it makes the controls really small for you, which can be a big struggle for people with bigger hands. Or you can play one player with the entire console, making it a lot more easier for people. The game comes with add-ons for the controller to make it much more easier to play if you're playing more than one player. This will include extra controllers and accessories to make it feel like you're using a much better joypad. The screen on the console can be quite small, but you can connect it to a TV to make it much better if you're playing with multiple player, because if you're just using one console with multiplayer, then it is much harder to play as the screen is very small, and you can play more than just two player. You can connect multiple Nintendo Switches together to make one large LAN party. This enhances the gaming experience as it makes it much more easier to see where you are and how you're doing in the game, since you have a much bigger screen and you can see more of the map and all of the things with it.
For human factors in the game Mario Kart, one limiting factor may be if a person has big hands. This would limit them because the controls with a Nintendo Switch are very small, so they may struggle to make the full functionality of the controller. Also, if the person has a form of disability where they may be missing a few fingers, or their arm for that example, then they may struggle to use it, since that is a necessary key to play in the game. Also, if a player suffers from photosensitive epilepsy, then they may struggle to play the game, since there is a fair amount of flashing colours. These flashing colours may be mainly seen when collecting one of the loot boxes, which can give you a power-up to give you an advantage over the other players within the race. If the player is colourblind, there may also be a few settings in the settings options, as of which they can adapt the game to fit them so they can see all the colours perfectly, so it is suitable to all players. With the game, it can come with a few pieces of additional technology. These may include having an attachment so that the two controllers can snap together and make a proper controller. The customizable settings may also help people with disabilities. If they struggle to move their arms about a lot, then there may be a setting as of which you can turn off having to tilt the controller to go around corners, or anything like that. For the user interface in Mario Kart, the HUD is a main part of it. Even though it's very minimal, it kind of shows you a fair bit about the game. This is because when you go into the loot boxes, which can give you power-ups, it shows you in the top left corner of the screen what power-up you've got and how many of them that you have. This is helpful because if you didn't know that, then you might try and underuse it and then not get the full potential of that power-up.
In the menu screen, you have a selection process for your map, car and player. When you're selecting your map, you choose whichever favourite or easy, depending on the map, depends on how you play through the game. And when you're choosing your character, it shows you different stats about the character and how he'll play. And then when you go into choosing your car, you can fully customise your car to how you'd like it, such as smaller people with smaller cars may go much faster but not have as much control, and if they're hit by bigger people, then they'll get kicked around better. But if you're a much bigger person, such as Bowser, you'll be much slower with more control, and you're kind of like a big barrier that can stop smaller players from getting much higher places in the race.
The game is very easy to play since it has such a young target audience. If it was a complex game, then the target audience would have been a bit higher, since you would have to be a bit more intellectual to understand how to play at its full potential. The design may differ between different platforms. This is because in the Switch, which is a more modern console, it would have a lot more higher quality and a better resolution than, for example, a DS. The DS will have a lower quality since it is an older console and wouldn't have as good technology as the Nintendo Switch would. Back in Mario Kart, the visual side of it is very iconic because if anyone saw the Mario hat or anything about it, they would immediately notice the brand and the entire franchise behind it. The colour psychology is quite bright and vibrant colours. This is to attract the younger audience and to also make it seem very family friendly. If it was like dark colours or reds and stuff dark reds, then it might give off a Slender game sort of vibe, which is not what you want in a family friendly game. The player viewpoint and the visual side of things will be a third person view of the car. It will be a third person view so you can see the things around you, and also so you can see if anyone's trying to sneak up behind you and knock you off the road. This makes it effective and very helpful to the driver, since they know if anyone is trying to obstruct their driving. For the camera techniques, it is normally a high angle, so you can see down on the car and you can see the character that you've chosen. This is helpful because the player might like to see their person actually driving the car if that's what they're into. The game will tend to be quite high key lighting. This is because in the game it will all be very bright and vibrant, as I mentioned earlier, so it comes across as a family friendly vibe.
For physical feedback, it is very minimal, as there's no vibration or any other indication that you've been hit, hurt or possibly died. The only way you can actually figure out if that's happened is by looking at the screen, which is one big downside because the player has a short attention span. They won't be looking at the screen, and they'll only look at the screen if they get a vibration in the controller to indicate that something bad has happened to the player. For audio feedback, the audio is pretty happy throughout the game unless you're in certain places, such as an iconic boss battle map, such as Bowser's Castle. Then it'll play some boss music in certain areas, but the majority of it will be very good, happy music to give a happy tone and mood, and also a family-friendly vibe, giving the emotion of a good game. There is not much dialogue in this game other than when certain characters do other things such as throw a shell at the other, where they'll do a little laugh or a look at them.
For information communication in Mario Kart, it gives you instructions as to which way to go around the track. This can be shown through the use of the arrows placed on the actual driving track and the racetrack. This may also be shown on the boost pads that are within the race. Also, this is shown when the player drives around and starts to go the wrong way. An arrow will come up on the top of your screen to tell the player to turn around and start driving the correct way before there is an accident. When you win the race, it also comes up with the place that you came, whether if it's first to last place. This is shown through the use of a text on the top of your screen which is very helpful and noticeable throughout the full game. Also, when the player falls off the map, a cloud person will come and pick them up, and they will also have defeated music. This will indicate that you've done something wrong in the game and to try to prevent that from happening again later within the race. The information communication in Mario is also shown through how the track is laid out. Since the entire world is basically just with one racetrack, that shows you which way to go, other than going backwards or off the track, which we've already mentioned. If you just follow the track as normal, then that is enough information to go around the race in its full potential.
There is very little to none strategical or tactical information communicated that you need, because it's a very simple game where all you do is to drive around a track multiple times. It's very simple.
The user psychology in Mario Kart, it mainly comes from remembering the controls, and that's for the long-term memory. This would be classed as long-term memory because it's obvious that you're going to remember them throughout the entire game, since if you forget the controls at all, then you're going to really struggle in playing the game. The short-term memory will be knowing which boxes have been taken so that you don't try to take the same ones, therefore you don't end up missing out on some loot drops or anything along those lines. Also, a long-term memory would be classed as remembering the maps and the track. This can give you an advantage since you will already know which way to go and which corners to take and which second to take them. The colour psychology in Mario Kart is very bright, so it comes across as a family-friendly game. This mainly stems from the Mario franchise, which is all to be for children and for families to play all together. The audio metaphors in Mario Kart are just basically the same as cars, but they will also have little friendly sounds such as yippee, which Mario says whenever he does something good, or there's a defeated sound when someone falls off the track or if you get hit by one of the red or green shells. The thought process behind the interactions in the Mario Kart game is you'll have to remember when to take a corner so that you don't take it too early or too late. This could result in you crashing and being overtaken and maybe missing out on one of the top 3 places within the race, which will mean that you're not going to be on the leaderboard.
Another way of rapid input / reasoning perception is basically when you see a shortcut in the game that you didn't know before, you quickly turn to get in it. This can be both good and bad, as firstly you get a shortcut which can make you easily get first place, but it could also be bad because you could miss the shortcut and hit a barrier, meaning you can slow down, lose all your momentum, therefore you could become last, and this could really damage the progress in that game.
The control method design in Mario Kart, this mainly gets shown in the controls. This is because for the controllers you can have it as a standard Wii Switch remote, which is quite small for people who have big hands, or you can use the attachments that you may get dealt with. The attachments may include having a little adapter in the middle which can attract the 2 remotes together, or you can have it as a steering wheel. Having it as a steering wheel attachment adds a sense of realism, since the game is about racing, and also in cars you use steering wheels. Also, there can be a little black attachment which gets added to give the controller triggers which can help you for braking or going forwards in the racing games. Also, for the attachments, you can just have it as a standard Wii Switch where you have controller on each side and the screen in the middle. This can also be adapted to using it instead of the screen on the Wii Switch. You can have it as a screen on the TV, which will give you a bigger play screen, which can help for you to use it to your full advantage. There would be no option to remap the controls, since it already has everything necessary to play the game in its full potential. If you was to remap the controls, it would make it awkward for the first few games that you play, since you would have to get used to the new control style. Within the game though, there is the option to have a different racing style. These may include automatic gears, manual gears, or keeping as default.
You also have many choices such as left-handed, right-handed.
For the technology in Spider-Man VR, it all really stems from the use of the virtual reality headset. This is because without the use of that, then it wouldn't be VR, and since there is a VR headset, you get to really embrace the full surroundings around you. The technology also is within the handpieces. This is because they are a new style of controller that game companies are trying to incorporate within the games so that they can jump on the more technological bandwagon. Controller to incorporate with the VR headset is the handheld devices. This is used so that the player has to use their full body to play the game in its full potential. If the player doesn't use their full body, then they're not going to be able to do all the controls necessary to play the game. They have used the handheld devices so it incorporates some sort of fitness while playing the game. However, some people may try to cheat the system and stay sat down, which is where the VR camera would make the player stand up by making sure that the VR headset is in a line where the player is always stood up. The alternatives to a VR headset are the games that you can play standardly without having the headset or the handpieces. These will be played by using a standard DualShock 4 controller if on PS4, or a standard Xbox One controller if you're playing the Xbox. For the human factors in Spider-Man Virtual Reality, these would include having missing limbs or appendages, or having faulty eyesight, or having restricted neck movement. These would stump your gameplay because if you did have any of these issues, then you would struggle to use the controllers or the VR headset. You would struggle with the controllers since you have to use full hand movements to hold them and swing them around depending on what game you'd be playing. Also, you may struggle to use the VR headset if you have neck issues due to the fact that it is relatively heavy, and also you will have to put up with that for however long you're playing the game for. For the headset, however, there are a few customizable settings. These will include tightening the headset so that it fits your head better and doesn't fall off during the gameplay. Also, these may include having the wrist straps on around the handheld devices so that it doesn't fly out of your hand in midair if you don't have a very tight grip of it. For the user interface in Virtual Reality Spider-Man, it mainly all comes from your head movements. This is because when you look around and look at a certain area, it will give you a different challenge to do. For example, one of the first missions that you will have to do to get used to it, which is sort of like a tutorial style, is if you look at the bottles or the balloons, it will give you the option to shoot webs from your hands in order to destroy them or to pull them close to you. These missions will be triggered by looking at them. So that is the main way how to interact with the device. There isn't much of a HUD, however, since it is all virtual reality, and since if they try to add a realism to the game, then there isn't any HUD on your life, so there is not going to be a HUD in the actual visions. For the menu screen in Spider-Man, there will just be the standard stuff, such as whether if you want to start a new game, go into the tutorial, or to load an already saved game. It will give you the option to do these, so if you have already completed the game once and you want to restart it, then you can quite simply select create new game, or however, if you're in the process of completing the game, you can select to carry on playing the saved game. The main character, Spider-Man, is very recognisable due to his big franchise behind him. He is recognisable from the movies, where he has been shown in a red suit with a spider on his chest. This is how he will be noticed throughout the gaming industry. The only customisable feature within the game is having the option of what kind of webs to shoot. You can shoot exploding webs, standard webs, or webs that will destroy things but are not explosive. These will all be changed due to how long you hold the triggers in for and which buttons you press while holding it in. If you're holding the trigger for a certain amount of time, then you'll end up shooting an explosive web which can destroy things. Feedback in Virtual Reality Spider-Man, the visual feedback is mainly shown through the Virtual Reality headset. It is an iconic game since everyone will notice his bright red suit. The colour psychology in the game is mainly shown through the reds and the blues. This can give off a positive vibe since Spider-Man is quite a helpful guy, but also there are some dark parts in the map which can imply that he's in a lot of danger. The player viewpoint will be first person as it is a virtual reality game, and you need to see it all from the first person perspective to have the full impact of that game. The camera techniques shown in the video game will be very minimal since it is all from Spider-Man's point of view. Also, the lighting effects will be bright since he is mainly outside, but also there will be some dark areas where he may be shown to be in danger or he might be getting attacked.
Some physical feedback you receive from when you're playing the virtual reality game is when you are either shooting or being attacked, you will receive vibration in both controllers that you are holding, which can indicate some danger. The audio received from playing this game would be a voice of Peter Parker / Spider-Man, seeing as though you are playing in his point of view, which is dialogue. A fully effective in this game would be when you're shooting your web, as you cannot fully simulate the actual shooting of a web, so that would be a full effect. The music playing in the game is usually just in the background and can be shown in intense moments of battle or just when you're swinging on your web or when you've completed a level. The emotion given in this game can be very interchangeable, as you can go from a happy into a sad into a stressful moment depending on if you're in a battle, swinging around or doing certain things.
The information communication in virtual reality Spider-Man, it all basically stems from looking at the different items that can be destructible or can be shot. This comes as information communication because every time you look at something different, it will tell you a little bit about it or if it is attackable. Also, the information communication can stem from having a different challenge to do, or from learning to do something different within the game, such as having the different webs to shoot, which all do something different, such as the explosive ones, the ones that pull stuff towards you, and ones that just simply destroy stuff. In the game, you have to be quite strategic and tactical about the things that you shoot, since if you take the wrong shot, then it may shoot you before you can end up killing it. So your character, which will be Spider-Man, can eventually end up taking damage and potentially dying. You will need to rapidly analyse the data happening around you, because if you immediately go under attack, then you're going to have to process that and learn how to counter-attack it pretty quickly.
The game world in this game is a whole city which you can swing around doing certain missions, such as the main mission, the main storyline, or you can do side missions where you find people like being robbed in the street, for example, where you can just stop the robbery, return the items, and that is side mission complete. The world is very big, communicating lots of information, such as the story will be big.
For the user psychology in virtual reality Spider-Man, the short-term memory will have to be who to shoot and where to shoot within the mission that you're playing. However, the long-term memory will be which webs to shoot and how that will affect the player who you're fighting against. Also, the long-term memory will have to be to remember where to go in the map and which parts can initiate which missions. Also, in the game, the metaphorical information can be such as symbolism, can be used as like the robbers will be wearing black beanies and just very stereotypical things within the game, such as that.
Also in the game, it requires a lot of rapid input and reaction time. For example, if you see something or a character's running away, you need to aim at them and shoot at them in a fast time so they don't get away or anything like that. And it also requires a good reaction time. For example, you're swinging from buildings, you need to be able to swing and change your aim into a different building before you fall, because that can cause a lot of damage to Peter Parker / Spider-Man / you. In this game, button mashing is possible because you can see an enemy and just start shooting rapidly at them, therefore mashing the fire button. And you can also mash the swing button, which can make you swing from buildings to buildings much faster.
Drama for design in virtual reality Spider-Man. There would have been a lot of prototyping to create it, since the use of the virtual reality headset is quite new and relatively modern. Since it is new, they would have had to prototype their game so it is very fitting to the console and makes it so it can all work at its full potential, and so that the player gets the full experience of the game in virtual reality. Within Spider-Man, where there isn't much of the map, it is more or less just an entire game based on guidance around the world. trying to find enemies and stop the bad guys from doing what they're doing, which would be committing crimes and just causing havoc within the town that you're supposed to be protecting. This does, however, lead to a good story mode where you can go around defeating all evil and doing what Spider-Man should be doing, which is being the good guy in every situation possible. To play the game at its full potential, the player has to make sure they have the right controllers in the right hand. So, for example, the left controller in the left hand and the right controller in the right hand. This is so that when they play the game, it is the right control, so it isn't like some sort of lock-in version. If they did have the controls in the wrong hands, I'm sure that the console would tell them to make sure they are, or since it would recognise them, or it would just make it really awkward to play the game. This is like when the VR headset is out of the play zone. It makes it awkward to play the game as it is unregistered by the VR camera. This is how it makes it harder to play in smaller rooms, since you need a big space to get the full potential out of the virtual reality headset and handheld devices.
For the console PS4, you need a certain set of VR, for example, the Sony VR headset. You cannot use other VR headsets such as the Oculus Rift because they are made from Microsoft, which are not Sony.
Alien energy sources within site